Good afternoon to all, good morning and good evening to some of you. Welcome to this third training on UN System-Wide Action Plan for Gender Equality and the Empowerment of Women. This is the third webinar that we will be holding in our course, our blended course on gender mainstreaming. Within our framework and our timeline, we're working now on gender mainstreaming in institutions. So we will be dealing with one example of a framework of gender mainstreaming in organizations. As you know, my name is Alicia Ziffer. I'm the Young Women Training Center coordinator and today's moderator for this webinar as well. As always, we will first have an outline of the webinar platform and how the webinar works. Then we will give the microphone and the stage to Sara Kalahari, who will be presenting with us today, and I will introduce her more in a few minutes. And then we will have a space for questions and answers as well. So how do we how does this webinar work, and how does our platform for webinars work? You have probably already used this platform, the GoToWebinar platform. You have all received a link through which you joined, and you will see that in the platform, we have a space for a question function where we can include any questions that you might have. I will be looking through the questions through the webinar, and then Sara will be able to address them. Also, please note that we will be recording this webinar so that you can access it afterwards, and also for those who were not able to access the webinar before, or at this moment because they had other commitments, they will be able to listen to it as well. We will share with you the link that will be uploaded to the e-learning campus. And the webinar will be uploaded through our YouTube channel. So where are we in our course? As you know, this, and I said before, this is our week 4, Gender Mainstreaming in Institutions. We're going through the guidance note, the specific section on gender mainstreaming in institutions, and this is our third webinar. During this webinar, we will be looking at the experience of the UN SWAP. So next week, we will meet in Geneva. And as we have noted in the e-learning campus, we ask you to bring some key documents to the face-to-face meeting. A copy of your country's national gender policy, a copy of your organization's gender policy, if it has one, of course, and a copy of a project document that you would like to work on to strengthen the gender perspective. As you know, the forum for this week is open. We welcome all of you to, we motivate you to post your comments in the forum. So today I'm very glad to present Sara Kalahari, who's interagency coordination specialist at the UN Coordination Division of UN Women in New York. In this capacity, Sara supports the UN system to develop and implement accountability systems for gender equality and offers technical advice on gender mainstreaming at a global and country level. Prior to this, Sara worked for the UNESCO in the Division of Gender Equality at headquarters and in the Resident Coordinator's Office of Cape Verde, which is a delivery as one pilot country, was at the moment. Before joining the UN, Sara worked for both non-governmental and governmental organizations in the field of development. She holds a master's in gender and development from the Institute of Development Studies in the United Kingdom. So without further ado, I will pass the screen and the microphone to Sara. Sara, thank you very much for being available to us and sharing with us the experience of the UN SWAP. We're very glad to have you. and we're sure that your presentation will be very interesting and that we will have a lot of questions on it. So to participants, please feel free to start including your questions, and so I will give the screen and the microphone to Sarah now. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
So thank you. Yeah. Can you see my screen?
Let's see if we can see your screen. I can't see your screen right now.
It's on presentation mode.
A ver. Okay, check if you can see the screen now. If you can show your screen.
Oh, voila.
Okay. There we are. Perfect.
Can you see it?
Yes.
Great, fantastic. Okay, so thank you very much for the opportunity to Alicia and the rest of the training center for the opportunity to present the UN swap. Why is this happening? Can you see it? Yes, hopefully. So the UN swap, it's one of the solutions that the UN system found to try to respond to some of the criticism that gender mainstreaming has received since this, adoption by the UN system, and this year we celebrate 20 years. So on this slide I try to summarize a little bit the main criticism that we find in evaluations of gender mainstreaming efforts, especially at the institutional level, just to put a little bit in context and see and analyze the solution that the UN swap came out with on the basis of these ones. So if we look at the evaluation of gender mainstreaming, you will see that one of the main criticism is the fact that there is either partial or lack of understanding on what gender mainstreaming means as a concept. With different entities interpreting gender mainstreaming in different ways, and therefore generating monitoring and reporting data that doesn't really reflect what's happening at the implementation stage. Another consequence is that of this lack of homogeneous understanding is that data is not comparable, and so it's very difficult to compare performance on gender mainstreaming both between entities but also within the same entity over time. So many evaluations conclude that the results of gender mainstreaming are not clear, and some even go as far as saying that gender mainstreaming actually didn't produce many results. Some evaluations also say that there is a generally limited interest in demonstrating gender mainstreaming value, exactly because of this difficulty in understanding what the concept means and what it means in practice when it is applied. And as I said, some evaluation conclude that gender mainstreaming probably has not been effective and should be dropped as a method. We do not quite associate with this type of conclusion, and the idea behind it is that there is in practice a different understanding of what gender mainstreaming means, but this should be bridged by effective training, exactly what you're doing right now, but also like with better tools that really help practitioners in understanding what gender mainstreaming means and how it can be done in practice. So based on this analysis of evaluation, the UN system came out some years ago with the performance standards. It has 15 indicators that are clustered around 6 performance areas, and we'll see this better in more details in a later slide. And measure the performance of the UN system on the basis of a 5-point rating system. 65 entities of the UN system report to the UN SWAP every year, and we develop, we gather the results on their performance, and we develop the ECOSOC report on gender mainstreaming for the UN system. The first cycle of the UN SWAP started in 2012, so 5 years ago, and 2017 is the last year of application. Starting from 2018, we will have a new framework. Can you see my presentation? Yes. Alicia? Oh. Can you hear me now?
Yes, now we can hear you. Can you just go back a little bit? And,
where did you lose me?
I think that when you sort of finished talking about the tools that need to be available and the criticisms, and then you went to the next slide.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so you didn't see this slide on the UN SWAP. You didn't hear me. No.
No.
Okay, let me repeat this. So the UN SWAP is the first unified accountability framework of the UN system that tracks progress of the UN system entities on gender mainstreaming. And it tracks its progress on the basis of performance standards. It has 15 indicators clustered around 6 functional areas, and the performance is measured on the basis of a 5-point scale system. Every year, 65 entities of the UN system report on the UN SWAP, and the data they provide is then later analyzed to put together the ECOSOC report on gender mainstreaming. The UN SWAP started being implemented in 2012, so 5 years ago, and 2017 is the last year of implementation of the current cycle. Starting in 2018, a new UN SWAP 2.0 will be implemented. The innovative aspect of the UN SWAP is that for the very first time, it gives the opportunity to have an overview of what the entire UN system is doing on gender equality and women's empowerment, and now gender mainstreaming is implemented in practice. And now my screen froze. Okay, so I had a couple of slides mostly for UN colleagues that are attending this course for your reference. This probably will not be very meaningful for external participants, but just to give you an idea of who's reporting, and so participants can check if their entity is. But as I said, 65 entities are reporting every year to the UN SWAP, which correspond roughly to 90% of the UN system entities. This is another slide more for UN colleagues. We can't see your screen. Can you see my screen now?
No.
Apologies, we see something black.
Oh my God. I think my issues with my...
Do you want me to show it from here? Or let's try again now, but if not, I can show it from here.
Now?
Yes, perfect.
I think, let me know, because I think my connection probably is not the best, and that's why you lose my voice and screen. So this slide summarizes the mandate upon which the UNSWAP lies. So we have the first ECOSOC resolution in 1997 that established gender mainstreaming, the endorsement by the CEB, of the UNSWAP, and its implementation started 2012 until 2016, last year, and 2017 the current one. As I said, each entity is supposed to submit a report each year in January on its performance on the basis of the 15 indicators, and ratings are given on the basis of 5 levels, as you see in these slides. So we have exceed requirements, meet requirements, approach requirement, missing, and unapplicable. Why was this done? The idea was to give entities a progressive scale so that they could meet minimum standard, but also if they wanted that the resources to, they could go beyond and further exceed and improve their performance. It was also decided to add this not applicable category because the UNSWAP has the ambition to try to capture all the functional aspects related to gender mainstreaming across the entire UN system, but also well aware that the UN system is extremely diverse. There are entities that are very have a clear gender equality mandate and have wide resources, while others are more technical in nature and have a less well-defined gender equality mandate. So the UNSWAP wanted to be as comprehensive and as inclusive as possible, so the addition of this not applicable category makes possible for all entities to report against this, the same requirements. Entities have to provide explanations for their rating and have to back their ratings with evidence. So that we ask them to upload documents that sustain the rating they give themselves. The UNSWAP is based on self-reporting, but UN Women and the help desk within UN Women operates a quality assurance mechanism every year to make sure that reports are as accurate as possible. And also for those indicators that are not meeting requirements, entities are requested to develop a remedial plan in which they say how long it would take them and which action they would take to make sure that their performance is improved. The CEB of the United Nations mandated UN entities to try to meet performance for all 15 indicators by 2017, meaning by the end of this year. This slide summarizes the different indicators. As I said, there are 15. They are divided in 6 areas. So we have accountability, results-based management, oversight, human and financial resources, capacity and coherence, knowledge and info management. These areas reflect the main functional areas in which all organizations operate. So it really captured the policy side, the elaboration of policy, the monitoring, reporting and evaluation side, the quality control, but also the human and financial resources that make gender equality work possible, the capacity to support this type of work, and coherence, the ability of entities to work with each other across the system to share information both within and outside. This slide describes the progress that the UN system has made. At the bottom, in 2012, you see the first year of reporting, and at the top, the last year. So recently, entities reported to us about their performance for 2016. So in order to see how the system has progressed, we look at the purple and blue bars. So we can see that when we started working, compliance was around 30%, while 5 years later is at 64%, indicating like a compliance rate that has more than doubled in 5 years. So it is, considering the diversity and the substantial innovations that the UN system require from entity, this performance is pretty impressive. But at the same time, we're very much aware that more works need to be done, because if we look at the left side of the bar, we see that 36% of rating are still not meeting requirements. These slides captures performance by indicators. So it really gives us the details of where the system is faring or performing better, and where and what are the pain points and the bottlenecks. For example, impressive progress has been done on indicator 1, policy and plan, the one that you see at the very top, with an aggregate compliance rate of 78%. Gender policies, and then you will see in the course of your course, are key driver for performance on gender mainstreaming across institutions. But we also see that there are areas in which the UN system is still struggling. For example, PI8 and PI9, gender resource tracking and gender resource allocation, towards the middle of the screen, have a still high percentage of entities that are either missing or that feel that the specific indicator is not applicable. There is, if we look, for example, at gender PI10, gender architecture and parity, we see that the percentage of entities exceeding this requirement is only 5%, which is really low, considering that this indicator captures the architecture that is in place within entities to make sure that gender equality work is being carried out. So these are the main areas of weakness and areas of strengths of the UN system. And this next slide capture projections. So on the basis of the performance of the different indicators over the past 5 years, we try to analyze whether these indicators are projected to meet requirements by the deadline, and the deadline is 2017, as I said before. The projection reflect a little bit the performance that we've seen in the previous slide. So we have some indicators that are perfectly online to achieve performance. For example, PI6, gender responsive auditing, and PI14, knowledge generation and communication, also driven by a very strong annual performance, while we have other indicators that are not doing that well, and at the current pace of performance will not be able to meet requirements, not even when the 2030 agenda is supposed to be achieved. So those are the areas in which the UN system needs to work: resource tracking, resource allocation, so how the ability to track financial allocation for gender equality, architecture, evaluation, and capacity assessment. As I said at the beginning, so this cycle of the UN swap is coming to an end this December. So entities are still working a lot during 2017 to improve their performance before the final reporting year. But starting 2018, we will launch a new version of the UN swap, the UN swap 2.0. The need for it comes from the fact that, as I said, we're still 36 percentage points away from full compliance. That was required by the CEB in 2012. But at the same time, we don't want simply UN entities to to meet those requirements, but we also want to raise the bar. So in the next cycle, some indicator will stay the same, but the requirements will be increased. We also wanted to make sure that the new generation of the UN SWAP really reflects and incorporates it to 2030 agenda. So all the SDGs and the focus on results and leaving no one behind for women is incorporated. So during 2016, we carried out extensive consultation across the UN system to analyze what indicators meant and what are the implications of indicators for entities in order to refine the framework and elaborate the new one. So the new framework looks like this. It looks a little bit different. There are two main areas. The area A that looks at the results, and we know our results are important, while the second area B still focuses on processes. So what the main difference between UN SWAP 1 and UN SWAP 2 is that at the beginning when UN SWAP 1 was launched in 2012, there was this need to have our house in order before focusing on results. So the UN SWAP 1 very much focuses on processes, on all the functions that within one entity help the achievement of results. We feel that 5 years were enough to at least start like a solid work on these functions, and now the UN system for the next 5 years can also look at the results and what type of results it produces. So the first 5 indicators look at SDG results, how these results are reported, are there any other results on linked to program that support the gender equality and women's empowerment. So here are the new indicators. So the first 3, leadership was something that was introduced and did not appear in the UN SWAP 1, as the work of UN SWAP 1 really brought to attention the fact that leadership is at every level within organization is really fundamental and really key for gender mainstreaming. And another innovation in UN SWAP 2 refers to the equal representation of women. In UN SWAP 1, the indicator that you see now number with 11 and 12 were merged. So we would look at gender architecture and equal representation together. It's in this new version they're now separated, also because there is much more attention and focus on the equal representation of women, gender parity within the UN system, also with the new Secretary General. So in this slide summarizes a little bit the new indicators on results. The first, as I said, focuses in particular on the SDG and SDG 5. The second on reporting. We still felt the entities needed an indicator that will help them be on track on how results for gender equality and women's empowerment are reported to their governing bodies. And the third one, tracks and measure all those reports that for one reason or the other are not captured in the organization strategic plans. Leadership, as I said, was felt to be instrumental. So a new indicator on internal and external championing of gender equality and women's empowerment is being developed. This is the end of the presentation, but if you're interested in knowing more, you can obviously, of course, contact me or access our resources online. You just need to Google UN SWAP brochure, UN SWAP technical notes, and you will get the latest brochure and the latest technical notes that describe in detail what each indicator entails. As far as the report of Secretary General on Gender Mainstreaming, the 2015 was published last year. We're currently working on the new one and will be published, I think, in a couple of months' time. And that report will be able to tell you exactly how the system is performing at the aggregate level. Thank you. That was it.
Thank you very much, Sarah, for a very interesting presentation. I will now share, I think, my screen to share with you. We have one question from Tracy that says resource allocation. Let me share my screen first. Wait. I don't think I can. Diane, can you help me? I'll change presenter. Okay, here, show my screen. Here it is. You are probably seeing my screen now. The first question from Tracy is that resource allocation seems such a critical element for advancing other KPIs. How do you manage when management does not see gender equality a component of an entity's mandate and thus do not allocate resources? If you could tell us more about what the experience has been or experience of specific organizations in the UN system.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's a very good question, and so as I said before, the UN system is very diverse organizations that have a clear gender equality mandate and others that don't, either because they're technical, because they don't have a strong gender equality expertise or sensitivity inside the organization to be able to do that. That is why that not applicable rating was first introduced in the US system. So the idea was to allow for some flexibility, especially at the beginning. And we have to remember that the UN swap, when it was introduced 5 years ago, was kind of groundbreaking in the sense that nobody or nothing had done something similar in the UN system before, something that was applicable across the board for everyone that would track progress and measure progress. So the idea of having a not applicable was also to make entities comfortable that if they didn't feel they had the capacity to work on certain indicator, they would still allow to report, and create a sense of inclusivity and make entity part of a network so that the help desk, UN Women, and all other participating entities could come and help them develop their capacity. If you remember my previous slide on the change in performance, the number of ratings rated as not applicable has been reducing across during the years. So we started with 9 percentage point in 2012, and now it's 7 percentage point. It could not seem like a great change, but because this is overall. But if you look at the performance of the single indicators, the reduction in not applicable rating in some of them, it's impressive. For example, one example is gender audit. So initially, 5 years ago, and the vast majority of entities felt that the gender audit was simply not applicable to that, and now is one of the best performing indicator, because thanks to that specific indicator and the introduction of the idea of gender audit in the UN system, we were able to start conversation with audit offices across the board, and now the UN, the interagency network on audit, has taken on board the work on the specific indicator and is working on it. So while the UN swap has no no power to impose whether an entity sees an indicator as applicable or not applicable, and so there is no ability to force someone to report an indicator if they don't feel so. What the UN system has done is that by comparing and then comparing the performance of entities against other, yet really forced the entities to see that those indicators were applicable, even in areas in which it wasn't even conceived before. So this positive, healthy competition that the UN SWAP has established has done wonders in this sense by showing entities that all 15 indicators are applicable and should be applicable, and that there are ways, and then technical support it's given to them if they need so. So on one side, the UN SWAP per se doesn't have any direct power, but the power of numbers and rating in a way has been able to show to senior leaders that some indicators are actually very much within their mandate and they should be doing something.
Thank you, Sarah. To continue in what you were saying, I wanted to ask you if you had any specific strategy to make to convince agencies because you did mention the fact that there were the numbers, but did you have any specific strategy on implementing that you think that might have helped the process of compliance, of seeing the relevance, of acknowledging how important it was?
Mm-hmm. So one approach that we have used, and that seemed very effective, besides, as I said, sharing the numbers and showing and comparing performance. It's also involving interagency networks, interagency specialized networks. So for example, working with the UNEG, the UN evaluation group, working with the strategic planning network, working with the audit network. So through audits, because audits are system-wide and entities participate and can participate in them, and they're extremely specialized, having those network work and take the performance, but also the coordination of that indicator on board has been very effective. It also gives this idea that a UN SWAP is not, and gender equality and women's empowerment is not something that is the limited responsibility of gender focal points, but it's a responsibility of every function within an organization. So the performance, for example, on strategic planning depends surely on the work of gender focal points, but also mainly on strategic planning officer within an organization, and how they reflect their work at the interagency level.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that further explanation. We have the questions open for any participant that would like to ask other questions. Something else that it would be interesting if you could tell us more or share your ideas. The UN SWAP is a model that we know that was built and developed and implemented within the UN system. As such, it has a lot of specificities that has to do with the specific functions of the UN system and how we work. Do you think that there could be lessons learned and good practices that could be shared outside the UN system, meaning that maybe other organizations seeking to mainstream gender could sort of take advantage on?
Mm-hmm. Yes, very good question. So it's true that the UN SWAP was developed for the UN system. So some of the it speaks to the UN system and try to capture the performance of the UN system. But at the same time, the functions that are covered in the 6 areas are functions that are performed by all organizations. Or public organizations, let's say. So for example, the development of policies, the monitoring of progress on results, quality control mechanisms, the management of human resources, knowledge management, organizational culture, and our organizational culture influences performance are are issues that are very much applicable to all public organizations. So we have received a lot of interest by entities external to the UN to try to adapt the UN SWAP to their specific to the specific cases. So, for example, 1.5 years ago, we worked with NHS, the National Health System of the UK, to see how the UN SWAP was relevant to them. Last year, we started working with women's machinery at the country level to see how the UN SWAP and the function of the UN SWAP could also help those women's machinery mainstream their work not only within their organization but within the different ministries of their country. So there is a need for some adaptation. Obviously, the UN SWAP as it is will probably is not perfect to be directly implemented in another public organization. But at the same time, there is very much potential and is very much relevant for these situations. So the lessons learned and good practices that we developed in the past 5 years have been seen as very much relevant to these organizations. So one of the aspects we're working on is how to try to use the SWAP for these areas. One very recent development is also like a spin-off of the UN SWAP for the private sector with similar criteria, so indicator and the 5-point rating, but we're still working on it. But I would say that in general, the fact that we receive so much interest by organizations outside the UN, I think is very promising and really testifies of the replicability and relevance of the tool in general.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Sara. We will, just for the participants, we will be uploading these resources, the ones that are already available, in the week 4 in the additional reading so that you can check them out. And of course, we will also share Sara's presentation so that you can check it more in detail and look at how the performance has been and what the processes have been as well. Of course, we will also we will have more on gender mainstreaming in organizations during the rest of the week. I don't see there are any other comments or questions. Yes, there is. Okay, I have one question here that I will post now in the PowerPoint presentation. No, wait, I have to escape. You will see a little bit my screen. I'm sorry for that. It says, thank you, Sara, for the presentation. If I'm not wrong, one of the areas that the UN agencies did not do well and will not meet the target by 2030 or 2020 was evaluation. Could you explain a bit more on the specific criteria and the bottlenecks? And this is a question that Asuka Murata from UN Women is asking.
Yeah. So the evaluation PI performance indicator is one of the indicators that that is managed by UNEC, so the UN evaluation group. And the secretariat of that management sits with UN Women within the Independent Evaluation Office of UN Women. The target date, the deadline to meet requirements for the UN SWAP is for everyone 2017. In this sense, it doesn't coincide with the 2030 agenda or other agendas because it was decided by the CEB that it would be based on a 5 years cycle. So the new one will start in 2018 and will again continue for 5 years. The difficulties with the PI5, but we could also share with you, there's been recently a report that goes much more into the details of the implementation of this indicator are twofold. On one side, the fact that many entities do not have an evaluation function. they're really struggling with seeing this indicator as applicable, and you will see that the rate of not applicable rating is quite high. Or when they have evaluation offices, they're very small with limited resources. And the second bottlenecks, in a way, is that the evaluation function is also becoming more professionalized. So the PI5, the performance indicator on evaluation, is the only indicator within the UN SWOP that bases the rating on a scorecard. So entities are required to rate the evaluation that they've conducted during the previous year on the basis of a series of criteria that are within this specific scorecard. And the scorecard was developed and agreed by UNEG. So the difficulty there is bringing the system up to speed with the additional complexity related to this specific indicator. But a lot of capacity building is happening, and as you probably know, there has been a big push in recent year to make sure that gender equality considerations are mainstream within evaluation, and still there is a lot of capacity building needed in that sense. But as I said, there is an help desk really that focuses specifically on this indicator. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Sarah. I know that there has been some very specific requests from some of our participants for very specific tools or terms of reference. I will get in touch afterwards with you so that maybe if you have any of these, you can share and we can share again with the participants. I think that now there are no more questions. So I would ask you to, if you want to make a final comment or anything you would like to stress for us, and then we will be closing the webinar.
I think I will just invite you to look at the resources that we have online. If you have questions, please don't hesitate to get back to us. One thing that is important, that is probably the innovative aspect of the UN SWOP is that, as I said before, the UN SWOP make sure, or like conveys for the first time this idea that gender equality and women's empowerment work is not the sole responsibility of gender units, of gender focal points, but it's a shared responsibility. Only with the active contribution and work of all functions of an institution we will be able to achieve gender equality and empowerment of women. So gender focal points or other focal points and other functions are really instrumental to make sure that the UN SWOP and the gender equality agenda is actually implemented in their daily work. So I really hope that when you go back to your respective organization and you go back to your function, you also, thanks to the training you're taking, you will really see how you can contribute yourself to this specific task, and now you can use the UN SWOP as an entry point to, for example, talk to your senior management, talk to your colleagues, look for resources, look for peer support across the UN system to try to make sure that the performance of organization in the areas of the UN SWOP is improves and meets a requirement requested by the CEB, by the deadline. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to present also, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sarah, for being with us today. I think this has been very interesting, a lot of information to continue analyzing and to continue thinking of. I think it's, although it's, as we said, it's a framework for the UN, although it's a framework for the UN system, I think it's important to think of it as something that might be useful for other organizations and broader systems. We're going to put on on the course site all the information, all the readings. We want to thank you everybody who has participated, and please look for the recording and for the PowerPoint in the webinar section. And remember to participate, and we have to bring the documents that we have kindly requested you to bring, and we'll see you next week. This is our last webinar of this course. We're very excited about meeting everybody face to face. So thank you again, Sarah. I think it has been very interesting. And please, if you do have other questions for Sarah, you can post them also in the forum, and then we can relay the questions to her as well.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.